He shared some of his story with me when I went to visit him at Loma Linda when he was undergoing proton therapy for cancer. And we had some time together, talked, and we've got to know Art and Connie. And today, Art is going to tell his story. And so, Art. I'm going to sit down here.
September 2011, I found out I had prostate cancer. I was really disappointed. I really got a little depressed. And I went to counsel with Pierre. During that counseling, Pierre told me about proton radiation at Loma Linda University Medical Center. That's the second time I heard about proton radiation. For I had read about it in a book that my urologist gave me to read about prostate cancer and the various treatments for it. When I went back for my consultation with the urologist for treatment, he told me I was a perfect candidate for surgery, for traditional radiation, and brachytherapy, that's seeds. I asked him about proton radiation. He said, no, that's not for you. It's experimental and it's new. Well, after the meeting with Pierre, I ended up on the church prayer list for prostate cancer, and Calvin came up to me and said, Art, I want you to call my brother George, who went to Loma Linda over 7 years ago for proton, and he's doing fine. I called George and many others, proton patients, and I decided that that's what I wanted to do. But I had to change insurance, and not all insurances would cover proton radiation. I was blessed in the fact that I worked for IBM for 38 years, and in their insurance policy, they have a non-pre-existing clause in it, meaning that even though I had cancer and I was switching to Blue Cross, I would be covered. So, while at Loma Linda for treatment, I attended the University Church. And at the University Church, I heard a sermon by the children's minister, Patty Marufo. We're going to see about 5 minutes of that.
Maybe life's challenges are weighing you down. Maybe you're hurting inside, in your core. Reach out and touch Jesus. Rediscover what it's like to be face to face with him. Talk to him. Tell him what hurts and what's in your heart. Allow him to call you daughter, mija, son, mijo, and allow him to transform your story of fear and hopelessness into one of faith and healing. Because this is where a new story emerges. It's a different story. It's a story of transformation. It's a story where you get to tell the amazing things that God has done and is doing in your life. This is a story that you can't keep to yourself because it's too good to hide. When people read the Great Commission in Matthew 28, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, we tend to make it so complicated. There's no scientific formula attached to it. And it's not about memorizing the 28 fundamental beliefs, as important and valuable as they are. It's not about doctrine. It's about Jesus Christ. All you need to do is tell your story. Tell your story. Share what Christ has done for you. I get the opportunity to share a story of what Christ has done for a poor farm-working family from the barrio. What's your story? We all have a story to tell. Tell your friends and colleagues. Tell your coworkers. Tell your classmates. Tell them how Christ has made an impact in your life and what he's doing for you. Tell them how he's helping you through the daily challenges. Let them know about him. Share the valleys too. Be real. Talk about the victories and the victories that can only take place through Jesus Christ. Tell your story to your children. Please tell the story to your children. Let them hear about your struggles and what Christ has done for you. Our kids need for us to be real with them. The good counsel found in Deuteronomy 6 for the people of Israel is relevant for you and me today. See, Deuteronomy 5, the previous chapter, had been a wonderful chapter review of the Ten Commandments. Then comes Deuteronomy 6 with some awesome follow-up advice. And let's take a quick look at that. Deuteronomy, hear, O Israel, and today I would say, hear, O Loma Linda University Church and all of those who are watching. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. It does a soul good when we love God this way. These commandments I give to you today, these commandments that I give to you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down at bedtime. Don't let your kids go to bed without sharing the story of Jesus' love for you and them. And when you get up, says the text, before everybody goes rushing out the door because we're so busy with all of our daily activities, don't let your kids go out the door without telling them the story of Jesus Christ and what he can do for them. Tell your kids so that when they're going through the tough seasons in life and when they're in need of healing, or when they find themselves in the midst of consequences of a bad choice, tell them so that they know that they can reach out and touch his cloak. Tell them so that they know that they can fall at his feet and find forgiveness, compassion, and healing. See, the miracles, lives transformed, those happen. But more of that can happen when people like you and me share our stories. So what's your story?
Patty's sermon inspired me. It made me think about my story, which is over 30 years old. So I decided to tell it at Loma Linda. This is my story. You would think the worst day of your life would be when you heard you had cancer. And for some it is. For me, it wasn't. You would also think that the worst day of your life would be like a day I had, May 16th, 1983. That's when my son Teddy, just 3 days shy of 18 months old, died in my arms. To understand why that wasn't the worst day of my life, I have to take you back in time to August 8th, 1965. I was just 17 years old. That's the day my sister-in-law died at the hands of my brother. They had 3 young children. I was the only other adult at the time who was there. I was lost. I was confused. I was torn up. I had no faith. I had nowhere to turn and no one to turn to. I was lost. I lied about what really happened that day. And based on that lie, my brother was released from prison in just 14 months. After he got out, he continued to raise his 3 children. 14 months later, January 29th, 1968, he died. It was a rainy day. Somebody was driving 80 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone and hit him. He died, and 4 others died with him, no fault of his own. That was the day before I was supposed to report to Marine Corps boot camp in San Diego. I got a 2-week delay, and in that 2 weeks, I buried my brother, and I married his sister-in-law, whom I was engaged to. For we were the aunt and uncle of the 3 children, a nephew and 2 nieces, whom we loved deeply. We wanted to get married and raise them. Well, I went off to boot camp, and in less than 6 months, I got a hardship discharge, an honorable hardship discharge from the Marine Corps. When I got home, life wasn't easy. I had a ready-made family, 3 children. I worked full-time, went to school 2 to 4 nights a week so I can get ahead, and I worked part-time. But the lie haunted me. I started drinking, and the drinking was endless, and it led to divorce years later. We had another child. We had our own child, Holly, 5 years after we were married. But the lie haunted me. I couldn't get rid of it. So after divorce, I too got a speeding ticket for going 80 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone. I still had nowhere to turn. I had no faith, and I had no hope. I stopped drinking out of fear, but that fear didn't last long because the lie kept coming back. It came back until I met a lady named Francie. She was a Christian. She told me about Jesus. She told me about his love and his forgiveness. I'd never heard about him. We studied and we prayed. And I accepted Jesus as my Savior. Francie also convinced me to tell the truth about the lie. So I went to my mother, my former mother-in-law, and my former wife, and told them the truth. They all forgave me. Francie and I got married, and our first child was a girl named Sarah. And that was a happy moment. 2 years later was the happiest day of my life. My son Teddy was born. We planned them 2 years apart, and they were 2 years, 5 days apart. It was amazing. It was a miracle. But about an hour after he was born, they discovered that something was wrong with him. He couldn't keep anything in his stomach. He couldn't eat. He couldn't even take in mother's milk. So they put him on an IV to keep him alive. Teddy spent the first 5 months of his life in the hospital at University of San Francisco Medical Center. We went back and forth every day. We never missed a day. and we usually spent evenings there and weekends. We kept praying for a miracle. Teddy had 6 major surgeries in his short life. After 5 months, they decided they couldn't find out what was wrong with him. In 1983, they called it chronic pseudo-obstruction of the small intestine. It simply didn't work, and they didn't know why. Nobody had ever been born with that problem that they could find. So against all medical rules, they trained Francie and I how to take care of him, how to change an IV line, how to do a PICC line, how to clean his wounds. It was not done then, and they sent us home with Teddy. We spent endless trips back and forth to San Francisco. There was always an infection. There was always something going wrong. His body was breaking down, but we still had hope, and we prayed. Even though I had very good medical insurance, it only covered 80%. Some things 100%, but his medical cost at home was $10,000 a month, even in 1981. He had IV lines, PICC lines, spare pumps. His bedroom was a little pharmacy just for him. We had everything you can think of. But the expenses, we had just bought our dream home, and we couldn't keep up. So we started selling things. We put an ad in the Mercury, then it was one line, $1. So we had about 15 lines in there. And 2 of those items were our wedding rings. Francie got a call at home saying, "Gee, I see you have all these things for sale, including your wedding rings. What's going on? You getting a divorce?" And she said, "No, we have a real sick child and we need the money." Well, he says, "Oh, well, I'm a reporter from the Mercury. I would like to talk to you and interview you." And I said, Francie called me at work and I said, "Nope." That evening, it turned into a yes. You know how that works. So he came over and interviewed us. First slide. And took a picture of Teddy. Teddy needed constant care, 24/7. After that ended up on the front page of the Mercury, not the back page, the phone started ringing, not only at home but at work. We got so many phone calls, we had to leave the house because, back in 1983, you didn't have recorders, let alone cell phones, and you didn't turn your phone off. So we left that weekend and we went to a SoCal camp meeting where they were having a health retreat. Perfect place for us to go. So we went there that weekend, spent the weekend there, got home Sunday night, and the phone was quiet. Early in the morning, I heard Teddy breathing hard. And I got up, got him out of his crib, and held him. Francie got up, and we sat there together with him. And he died. The thing that saved his life, or extended it, was the IV line, but it also gave him cirrhosis of the liver, and that's what he died from. We didn't know what to do. So we called his doctor, and I think we're the only ones that had his home phone number. He trusted us with it because we saw him so much. We called him, and he came over and filled out the papers for Teddy. We took him and made arrangements for his service. We got back home, and the phone rings again. I answered it, and it's the reporter. And he says, "Oh, I want to do a follow-up on Teddy's story." And I said, "It's too late. He died." He said, "Oh, I want to come over anyway and talk to you." So he came over, took another picture, and again, it ended up on the front page of the San Jose Mercury. That got a lot of attention at IBM. I was a manager, and they were quite frankly embarrassed that I was going through so much without support from them. But I didn't take my personal problems to work. I just didn't do that. We lost everything. But it was nothing compared to Teddy. After we moved, bought another house, rented a house, and we moved. We had another child, Matthew, another son. There was fear when Matthew was born. Would he be the same? Will I have to go through it again? Because nobody knew why Teddy was the way he was. So a happy moment was when he was born and he was completely normal. And he's 27 today. Not today, but he's 27. But the strain of Teddy's death affected our marriage. And it ended in divorce, not of my choice. But I still had my faith. I still had hope, and I still had somewhere to turn, always. That never changed. And I never asked God, I never challenged him why about Teddy. I just accepted that gift and did the best I could. Now we go back to September 2011. Connie and I were pretty happy, but the doctor wanted me to get a biopsy because my PSA kept going up fast. I didn't think it was a big deal. But after talking to Connie, I got a biopsy. When the diagnosis came back with cancer, I was disappointed, but after talking to Pierre and being on the prayer list and being accepted at Loma Linda, in January we went to Loma Linda, and on our very first day, after our consultation, I met Dr. Lynn Martell. He's responsible for all the support groups that support the proton radiation treatment patients. On Tuesday night, there's a potluck, which usually had 70 to 80 people there. On Wednesday night, was in the big auditorium at the Drayson Center, and the Drayson Center is a 100,000 square foot workout area that Loma Linda built that all the proton patients and their spouses get a free pass to while you're there, which I used. At that meeting, there's usually 200 to 230 people attend that meeting, and half of them being patients and half of them being caregivers or spouses. On Thursday night, there's a restaurant tour, and usually between 40 and 70 people show up for that. Dr. Martell was amazing what he did with only 24/7. He not only ran the support groups, but he also did proton radiation treatment. On Wednesday night is considered graduation night, so as you're getting near your proton completion or completed it, you get to get up and give a talk. The second night we were there, the second meeting we went to on Wednesday, a gentleman got up from Texas and he said, prostate cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. He says, I got to come to Loma Linda, and it's changed my life forever. Not because of the proton radiation treatment, because Loma Linda is a special place. It has a special spirit about it that you just can't deny. Dr. Martel said there are no accidents that you were there at Loma Linda. Less than 0.5% of the diagnosis for prostate cancer a year, which is between 32 and 36,000 men, get to Loma Linda. And all the people I talked to agreed. A story about a friend who got cancer, and he called a friend he hadn't talked to for 30 years. And he said, oh, you got prostate cancer? Go to Loma Linda. I just completed there. You have to get radiation from Loma Linda. It's the only thing you can do. Just story after story of, and there are no accidents why we ended up at Loma Linda. And it is a special place. All the way from the first time that Connie and I drove up to the parking lot and were overwhelmed by the size of the parking lot and the size of the buildings, we were lost. This gentleman came up and said, can I help you? I said, yes, we're here to go to the James Slater building so I can talk to a doctor about cancer. And he said, oh, yeah, you can park over here and it's right over there. Well, even when we got out of the car, we were kind of lost. He came back up to us, guided us into the building, and says, now that's the elevator, but you go downstairs, not upstairs. I said, okay. But that's the way it was at Loma Linda. From the janitor to the doctors, can I help you? Is there anything I can do? It was constant. I never felt that I was in a hospital. I was an out-treatment patient, and I took my treatment at night. But it's amazing when you get in a room with 200 people, half of those being men with cancer, and they're laughing, hysterically laughing. How can you do that if you have cancer? Well, that's part of the treatment at Loma Linda, is the spiritual treatment. They treat the whole man. It's amazing. It was so easy to get to know people at Loma Linda because there were no facades. All the people, we knew we had cancer, we knew we were there for treatment, and we had hope that we were going to be cured. So nobody cared what your background was, where you were from, who you knew. No one cared. It wasn't important. So the friendships at Loma Linda, they're amazing. And while I was there at Loma Linda, I had lots of support. I had a visit from Jerry and Ted, Cal and Lorraine, Tom and Joan, and I was on the church prayer list, and my sister-in-law came with my mother-in-law to visit. My son came to visit me. I had friends from Taos, New Mexico visit, and calls from Willie, from Steve, and from Eileen. And I knew I was on the church prayer list, and I knew that made a difference. Through all my life's challenges, and there's still challenges in life, until I accepted Jesus, I was lost. But I haven't been lost since. I always have somebody to turn to, and I always have somebody to listen to me. He made all the difference in my life. I'd like to end with my daughter Beverly's favorite verse. And that's 1 Corinthians 13:13. Now faith, hope, and love, but all of these three, love being the greatest. And I have learned more about the love of Jesus here at Hollister through Pierre's many sermons on love and Jesus and how he loves us and what he's done for us. And the depth of it. It has changed my life. I want to thank you all for listening, and God bless.